What's happening, everybody? James Hancock here to review the 8th and final episode of the first season of Taboo. Show that overall was pretty goddamn good, and I have to give a thank you to everybody who's been watching these videos because a lot of you have been recommending that I start checking out Peaky Blinders, which is also created by Stephen Knight, who's one of the writers and directors on this show, and I'm loving Peaky Blinders. I might have to say I haven't finished the first season yet, or first series as they say in the UK, but I think I like Peaky Blinders more than Taboo, and I like Taboo quite a bit. So I'm really looking forward to finishing up the first 3 seasons of Peaky Blinders and being ready for the fall. So thank you, everybody who made those recommendations, along with all the other recommendations of good follow-ups to Taboo. But let's stick with the episode at hand and the season at hand, because now we can look at it overall. And I'm not quite ready to call Taboo one of the all-time great seasons of television, which not an insult, but it's kind of a reverse compliment. But I think it's really goddamn entertaining. Great writing throughout, superb acting. Easily, for me, the best part of this was the ensemble cast. They just had so many incredible actors in the mix. I love the dark tone. I love the explorations of the savage side of men, whether it's in business or in cannibalism or in having sex with your half-sister. This is a movie that's unafraid to hold a mirror up to some of our baser instincts, and that's what made it so honest and exciting and entertaining to watch. From a historical standpoint, I really enjoyed watching the three-way chess match between the East India Company, the British Crown, and the United States of America. That's fascinating, and Tom Hardy totally held it all together. I mean, Tom Hardy's obviously got star power. He's so goddamn good in movies like Mad Max, or even when he's playing like smaller character roles in other films. I'm totally on board Team Tom Hardy these days. But one thing I will say about this season is that it totally wrapped up every single dangling storyline, which I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. Sometimes you want to leave a little something open just so people are hungry for the next one, because some people might say, oh, that was cool, one and done, let's move on. I feel like you gotta whet people's appetite a tad, but I know they're working on season 2, and we'll get to how this episode ended in a minute, but I feel like they set things up in a way where they can branch off in an entirely new direction to have a complete fresh start, which is really exciting because you don't want to have the sophomore slump where you try to do the same thing a second time. As we saw with the show True Detective, that was a disaster. And so I like the fact that Taboo is going to explore some new territory. But let's dig into episode 8. Definitely one of the stronger episodes of the season. Might not be my favorite. My favorite still might be episode 7. I thought the torture sequences in that were particularly gruesome, and I don't know, for whatever reason, I feel like that one really helped. Maybe because at the end of it, I was so curious about what was going to happen, because as we remember, it ends with James saying to Sir Stuart Strange, I have a use for you. And I can't imitate Tom Hardy. If I could imitate Tom Hardy, I would be Tom Hardy, be a goddamn movie star, but I'm not. I'm just a humble YouTuber. But this episode begins with Zilpha throwing herself into the Thames, and initially I thought perhaps it wasn't necessarily going to be the end of her story. I mean, she sinks down to the bottom, and James obviously has a very strange relationship with water, and he seems to be able to communicate with the dead, in particular if they die a water-based death. And ever since his mother tried to drown him, he just seems to have a really intense connection to the supernatural through water, which is a really interesting connection. Obviously, very, very sad end for Zilpha, because I was kind of hoping that Zilpha would get to sail off to the new world, but that is not meant to be. We have a fantastic confrontation between Sir Stuart Strange and James, talking about the various things that James did on Sir Stuart Strange's behalf, and James admits that as dark and as evil as the East India Company might be, that after he was saved and kind of restored in Africa, he has this great line, I don't want to get it wrong, but he says, I witnessed and participated in darkness that you cannot conceive, which is a great line. So I don't know if I'll ever know the full extent of the crazy things that James did while exploring Africa and becoming rich with diamonds and that sort of thing, but clearly he went to the dark side. Hell will have no surprises for him, to borrow a line from Ken Russell's The Devils. James makes a deal with Stuart and says, look, both I and Godfrey will maintain our silence in exchange for a ship. We need a ship with supplies to take all of us and our fellow conspirators to the New World, and you have only a few hours to make this happen. And so Stuart Strange, in good faith, frees Helga and the women that have been working with James and arranges for the ship and the supplies, and he sets to work trying to basically cover his ass because he has an ulterior motive that we learn about later in the episode, which I'll get to in a minute. We have another fantastic bit of comedy courtesy of Tom Hollander, who is easily my favorite character in the show, Mr. Chumley. And we see James's son arriving and knocking on his door, and in the room there's a half-naked girl passed out on the bed, and Chumley's passed out on the floor. And he's like, boy, I'm a scientist. Like, how does he keep finding me? Like, he finds me in my dreams, and he's like, you must humor me and just tell me. And the boy's like, I just deliver messages, sir. It's so great. But I love how haunted Chumley is by his relationship with James. And yeah, guys like Tom Hollander really just sell this show for me. Without him, my enjoyment of the show would be greatly diminished. So while Chumley gets to work making bombs, meanwhile we have James and his testimony. James is providing his testimony to Solomon Coop, and he's just speaking gibberish for a while and speaking all these foreign tongues and growling and doing his whole James Delaney routine. And he starts getting threatened. And Solomon Coop says, like, I'm going to rip out all the stitches from your body with my fingernails, and I'm going to smash your balls to paste and feed them to you. And he's making all these threats. And James essentially says, all the charges against me will be dropped by the East India Company. All the testimonies you've been promised, you've been burned. And all this is going to happen imminently. Solomon Coop realizes that he has been outmaneuvered, reports back to the Prince Regent that all hell's breaking loose, and sure enough, James does get released. All the charges of treason have been dropped, and it's just madness and insanity as everybody starts maneuvering against one another. And the Prince Regent tells Solomon Coop, look, just kill him. He's like, but if we kill him, you know, that Nootka Sound will be inherited by the Americans. And he's like, I'm the Prince Regent, I'm the head of state, I don't give a fuck about the promises or the treaties or whatever, just kill him. And Solomon Coop gets to work rounding up some soldiers to eliminate James and all of his co-conspirators. James receives a suicide note from Zilpha, and she explains what she's doing, why she's doing it. And James is confused because he's wondering how come he can't feel her. He's telling Lorna that if she were in fact dead in the Thames, he would know, and that because the dead and the spirits speak to him. And he's very, very bewildered. But they essentially rally and have to move past this, even though, for the time being, the mystery of Zilpha has to remain exactly that, a mystery. And James is just scrambling to take care of all of his unfinished business before his crew is supposed to set sail. Because essentially, they're waiting for high tide, and when it begins to ebb, they're going to skedaddle. It's kind of a sad moment when Brace is told that he would not be coming, and Brace is like, oh, please, at least tell me it's because I'm an old man and I wouldn't survive the trip. Like, give me something. And James says, look, you weren't born for freedom. You wouldn't know what to do with it. But he does leave Brace the house and the property and everything in it. So Brace is at least provided for, but obviously Brace will have no place in this new adventure that James is embarking upon. So I just noticed that this bottle of water is in frame. I'm going to take it out of frame, but just so you know, I noticed it personally. I didn't want it to suddenly just go bloop and have it disappear from the frame because that would be weird. Now you go bye-bye. That was sloppy on my part. So as all the powder is loaded onto the ship, Sir Stuart Strange has yet another one of his conspirators or employees taken out. Clearly, Stuart Strange is just trying to mop up all the details behind him. James meets with Dumbarton, the American agent, and explains that he knows that he was in fact a turncoat against the Americans, was in fact working for the East India Company. And even though Dumbarton thinks that James is meeting with him in order to give him Nootka Sound to give to Stuart Strange, James ends up, instead of signing the agreement, stabs him with a pen, drowns him in blue dye, disembowels him, hangs him up. You know, not a good death. But Dumbarton, fuck him. I'm an American. He betrayed the Americans. He got what he deserved. So we do get a little closure with Zilpha. Her spirit does start to speak to James from the river, and they have these scenes of them kissing underwater, and she promises that they're not done with each other yet. And so that, at least for now, has been resolved. But then we get this huge, epic battle down by the docks as the ship is trying to set sail. The battle's pretty damn satisfactory. I mean, this whole show has had violence, but there hasn't been any major action set pieces. It's mostly been one-on-one, you know, knives and things like that. But we actually get a full-blown battle here with tactics and maneuvers, and initially they do well because of all Chumley's explosives, but then things start to turn against them because Helga gets shot, and Chumley ends up being half blown up by his own explosions, even though he does live and gets dragged off. And Lorna gets wounded, and so it's not going well. And some people are just getting left behind and left for dead as they desperately try to get everybody on the ship and set sail. They are successful. They do set sail, and at the same time, Sir Stuart Strange goes to his office, and he's all excited because there's this package waiting for him, and he thinks it's going to be an agreement for Nootka Sound, and he's going to be wealthy and powerful and have all the tea in China, and he thinks it's from Dumbarton when he doesn't realize it's actually a trap. And as he opens it up, Pow! It blows up in his face and his entire office. So bye-bye, Sir Stuart Strange. Couldn't have happened to a nicer fella. At the same time, Chichester and his investigation into the sinking of the Cornwallis is wrapped up because he goes to James's home because he's been told that sealed and signed testimony is waiting him. Brace tells him where to find it, and he finds testimony by both Godfrey and by James waiting for him, so justice will be served for the people who were drowned aboard that ship. So on the boat, or on the ship, James is kind of assessing who's alive, who's wounded. Chumley, who's just all half burned and messed up, we don't know if he's going to live or die. He's kind of speaking incoherently and asking for forgiveness from Godfrey, thinking that Godfrey, who's still in drag, is someone else, and Godfrey gives him forgiveness. Kind of a sad, tender moment because Chumley's obviously totally out of his mind. I hope he survives to season 2 because I will freak the fuck out if we don't have him back. Atticus and James start to strategize, and Atticus thinks, all right, off to America, and James corrects him. Says they're going to Punta Delgada and the Azores. He says he needs to see a man named Colonnade. Whatever that means. I don't know. All those references totally escape me. I don't know if I missed that earlier in the show, if these are all new characters and locations for the next season. And they essentially declare themselves Americans. And in a great moment for me as an American viewer of a British television show, they lower their flag and they raise the American flag. So USA, baby, USA. So that was a nice moment seeing, that transition. And obviously this is a country of immigrants apart from the Native Americans. So yeah, all these cannibals and hookers and murderers and alchemists and madmen like we see on the ship, those are our founding fathers. Essentially, we all descend from them. So yeah, it was very, very cool seeing them make that switch. I'm very excited to see their continuing adventures. I hope they get the season 2 or series 2 out of the gate as quickly as humanly possible. And yeah, once again, thank you to everybody who's watched these last 8 reviews on this, and I hope you'll watch some of my other TV reviews. I'm probably going to be tackling The Leftovers in a month or so. I'm definitely going to be tackling Iron Fist. I'm going to continue covering The Expanse. I need some more shows to review. I mean, definitely Twin Peaks, Game of Thrones, but anyone who has recommendations about things that are ongoing or about to come out, that would be greatly appreciated because people seem to like these videos. They get my most traffic of anything that I cover, so I'm going to try to review as many good shows as possible. I don't want to review shows that I'm not in love with because I don't want to be one of those dicks online talking trash about things. I'd rather focus on the positive. But if you have some amazing shows I need to watch, definitely let me know. Thank you so much for watching. Give me a shout out on Twitter at Colbrax if you want to talk further. And I'll be back at y'all tomorrow night to review episode 6 of The Expanse. So long.